Thank you for joining our monthly Revenue Engine Masters podcast of the month, where I speak to go-to-market, marketing ops, sales ops, RevOps leaders who will unveil actionable strategies about today's and tomorrow's market. And every month when I speak to a revenue marketing, sales ops, and RevOps rockstar, we're learning about how they're building and future-proofing their go-to-market strategies, optimizing their systems, their go-to-market data, and their processes to drive sales efficiency, sales velocity, and consistent revenue growth. And specifically, and more importantly, how they're investing in, adopting, and layering in AI over their stack and over their processes to achieve their goals. I believe marketing ops, sales ops, RevOps teammates and leaders are the nucleus of any org. They're the glue that really holds our integrated go-to-market strategy together and that motion together to drive predictable revenue and scale. And today we have the pleasure of speaking to a personal friend, a former colleague, a trailblazer, Jason Kaska, who's the VP of RevOps at DroneDeploy, a 50 million ARR company scaling quickly to 75 million. And he was also the VP of RevOps at Sojourn, where he scaled the team nationally to internationally and from 10 million to 165 million in ARR. So super impressive. Jason, thanks for spending time with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Jason, I'd love our viewers first to get to know you a bit and where you're from, that path that led you to a really successful career in RevOps at great brands like Sojourn and DroneDeploy now, and even further behind. Tell us what you want to reveal to us today.
Yeah. So I'm a farm kid from the middle of nowhere, Southeast Iowa. I grew up on a ranch with more cows and pigs and every other livestock in our community than people. And I grew up doing, kind of dreaming of getting out into the world and working and doing things outside of feeding animals and raising livestock. But I went to a small college down in Southeast Iowa, and my focus on just general business. I didn't know really what I wanted to do, but made some great connections, had some great mentors. It was about 20 years ago now. Made my way to Omaha. I worked for a company, a large CPG company, where I got 10 years of experience doing a lot of things. I got to experience a $4.5 billion M&A exercise, another $1 billion exercise. I got to support the exec staff at this Fortune 500 company and ran a lot of analytics, a lot of modeling, system integration. At one point, I was managing the second largest RFP in the world in the private sector. And so just a tremendous amount of great experience. And I decided to actually go down in my career a little bit and move over to Sojourn, who was a local tech startup here in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places. And I was really excited about the difference in culture going from a huge company with 20,000 employees to a company where I think I was the 163rd person that was hired. And it was a small, not profitable, emerging ad tech solution. And was really excited. I've always been kind of a nosy person. I understand what you need me to do. And I immediately, focused on those things. But then I started to realize, there's great opportunities in the biz dev space, and when it comes to all the different ancillary technologies that exist, like you could build, you could buy, you can do a combination of both. And I was really excited about influencing that. And eventually at that company, I took on obviously sales ops and rev ops functions, some marketing ops functions, but I also ended up taking on biz dev. So I was running about a team of about 40 different BDRs, SDRs. And this was probably one of the most valuable pieces of experience I've had in the RevOps space, because I really felt the consequences of the systems, the processes that I built, the technology I adopted. And but it was a smashing success. I mean, it was a great endeavor. That team incrementally created millions of dollars in revenue for the business. And a lot of those people moved on to do other things, some in RevOps, some in sales. But then over the last 2 years, I've worked for DroneDeploy, where my role is very much centered around the same things, influencing the business in a really positive way from a data and systems perspective.
amazing background from CPG and a huge M&A to a smaller scale up that wasn't profitable. And what's really stands out to me is I know you as being respectfully nosy, and that endless curiosity really helps you out. I probably helped you out in your career, but you have a unique experience owning biz dev and experiencing that pain. That how do we generate material pipeline, generate that pipeline contribution and see it through all the way to that revenue contribution. That's a unique perspective I forgot about you. So thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
So really, really fascinating. For context for our listeners, just go briefly into DroneDeploy's ideal customer profile, your buyer persona, maybe your motion a little bit, and the stack that you've implemented and you maintain to achieve your goals.
Yeah, DroneDeploy is a fascinating company. And I'll just start with saying this, like, as I do interviews and hire folks, a lot of times people ask the question, like, why did you choose DroneDeploy? And I think a lot of my fascination with DroneDeploy boils down to, I love companies where the alternative to the service they provide just absolutely stinks, right? So DroneDeploy, I mean, the alternative to DroneDeploy is a guy on a ladder or a lady with a camera. And, you know, those are fine, and they've worked for obviously a really long time, but technologies just enable things to be so much more precise and automated and easy and safer and less expensive. And so DroneDeploy's offering is a reality capture, 3D mapping, modeling, and a suite of other solutions that we offer the construction, energy, and very many emerging markets as well. And it's had a really compelling use case in that when companies are construction businesses are growing at a rapid rate, we help speed the process up for them. We help illuminate data. We help with insurance claims. We help overlay what your construction plans were, your blueprint plans were to what the reality of what your building is. And those are all things that were really kind of impossible or very difficult to do prior to this kind of technology. And so when the markets are great and construction is booming, we accelerate things for them. And when companies are contracting, trying to find ways to be more efficient, we help them save money. And of course, through it all, like one of the things I'm just really proud about with DroneDeploy is that, you know, we create a lot of, we take a lot of dangerous jobs and give it to robots. And I think that's a really, really important thing.
Amazing. We'll get into how you stay focused and how you build systems to stay focused across all those different categories and applications. Tell me a little bit about your stack that you've implemented to go support sales to CS, especially from your perspective, owning BD and owning sales ops and RevOps in the past.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are the classic tech company. We're using Salesforce, we're using a Marketo, and we've got, a massive stack of other solutions. And it's been kind of interesting. So the DroneDeploy journey is a lot like a lot other SaaS tech companies out there, is that, they started with this great product and they went to market and they built this machine to establish single license buyers. And DroneDeploy was really successful at that for many years, for 7-8 years. And just like many companies, as they scale, they realize, we have something that's really attractive in the B2B space and the more enterprise or mid-market solutioning. And so we started to land some larger customers and realize, hey, we can land a large construction account, which is worth like 1,000 individual single license accounts. And heck, they even pay us, there's a lot of benefits to doing that. They adopt at a high level and they have people in place to enable their teams. And so we've had over the last 2-3 years this shift to building up our enterprise business. And, people like me and our CRO, which I know you know as well, Brad King, we were brought on to really help establish that business and that process. And so interestingly, we've actually in a lot of ways have contracted our tech stack from that single license model where there was a lot of holy data. And so there was a lot of enrichment steps. There was a lot of passing of data from like product to the MOPS platform to, data warehouses to the CRM, and then some kind of bi-directional passing of data and different stages of enrichment. And what we found is that a lot of times companies, they try to anticipate the complexity they're going to experience as they scale and kind of grow up as a business. And it's really difficult to anticipate the complexity. And so I've always been a fan of build for the business that you are now, trying to consider the next phase you're going into, so you're not, prohibiting your growth or, limiting yourself. But it's very, very difficult to anticipate the complexity you're going to have 5 years from now in your business. And so we kind of trim back and simplified, which is one of our company's core values. Is we do work on simplification. And so when we think about our tech stack today, everything is really centered around how do we get our products in front of the right people at the right time in the most easy way possible. That is our goal for every systemic or process-oriented change or implementation that we make. And this is a thing that, like, I been around long enough to observe, is that the buying process today is very different in terms of acquiring software and integrating than even 10 years ago. And having been in a buying role for a long time, I think a lot of that comes down to it is far easier to integrate things than it was just a few short years ago. All these tools have made it so much easier for you to adopt a product, integrate it into your current tech stack, and then enable your teams to start using it. And so I read a stat here recently that came out from a company called Qualified, that 73% of enterprise buyers are purchasing from the first company that they engage with. And that is up a lot over the years. And I think that's super fascinating, because really what it comes down to is that if I seek you out and you solve my problem, I'm way more comfortable nowadays making the decision, taking the chance, buying your product, integrating it, because it's easier to deprecate solutions. It's easier to integrate and, of course, deprecate them as well. And so all of this to say is, like, all of our tech stack decisions we're making right now, we're really trying to put it through the lens of what makes this easier for the buyer, what makes the information that they're seeking out more accessible, and then what makes it easier for us to usher them through our sales funnel and ultimately, like, build a really good, mutually beneficial dynamic.
I love that. There's a few things that stand out to me. I'm a sales leader, so that speed to lead stat, from Qualified is super critical. So how do you trim down your stack to the most simplified stack that enables your sellers to sell and your buyers to buy what's going to be most impactful for them now in the moment, before you just start tacking on different point solutions or platforms and consolidating, converging? So, like, you're really providing that focus. And I love the way you think about that. Fascinating. I think this is a great segue into getting into some specifics. And some companies are what I would call AI enabled. They're adopting AI internally as this tactical layer on top of how they're working, or a process for operational efficiency gains, or otherwise. And some are AI native. They're leveraging Gen AI products and LLMs that they can take to market and monetize on. And DroneDeploy absolutely is AI native. But since you've started at DroneDeploy 2 years ago and then seen that transformation, you've adopted and implemented AI while you're simplifying your stack to support your org and to support your buyer along their journey and to become more AI enabled. You told me something really interesting the other day. I'd love the listeners to hear about a conversation you had with the board. Could you start by sharing that what you heard from an investor and those compelling stats around AI adoption in SaaS?
Yeah, one of our investors shared some results of it was a compensation survey, but it hit in some other go-to-market tactics and strategies as far as investments that there are companies that we're making out there today. And one of the studies that they shared was super compelling and a little bit shocking to me. And I'll preface with, they surveyed companies of our size, companies smaller than us, and then large enterprises, like the IBMs of the world, where they have thousands and thousands of employees. And what they did is they asked the question that, what is your stance on AI as a solution to service your customers and your employees? And what they found was that 55% of the companies they surveyed either had no plans to integrate AI, or they didn't know, which kind of blew my mind. I'm sitting here thinking we're maybe behind behind the ball here on things in terms of integrating, finding useful ways to utilize AI. But in reality, if you are using it at all, you're actually in the minority. And I oftentimes think about the 10-80-10 rule, right? So you have the 10% of people, when it comes to change and innovation, they'll just always adopt it because they're very innovative and they're less resistant to change. They're less risk adverse. And then the other end of the spectrum, the other 10%, they'll never accept change. They'll wholesale reject it because it's scary and it's different, and they like to stick to the tried and true. And then the 80% are, they just need to be convinced. And so when it comes to AI, this one to me feels very much like a no-brainer. Like it is coming, whether or not people like it, enjoyed it, are in love with it or intimidated by it. It doesn't really matter at this point. It is happening, right? It's going to make its way into, as it already has, into many businesses, and that will continue to be the case. And so I've just kind of felt as a systems leader and a business leader that I always either want to be at least in the 80%, or if not the first 10%, but definitely I never want to just be wholesale resistant to adoption of new tools and technology. And so just kind of pausing on AI as a go-to-market solution, there's a lot of different tools out there. There's been, I think, a record number of startups in the last couple of years that are really just an AI solution for a specific kind of niche area. And there are some really fascinating use cases. The thing is, though, is that I know at the speed things are changing, that as much as I am maybe accepting and willing to try new things, I also know that there's danger in adopting something that will probably look and work completely differently in a year. And so I'm kind of cautiously optimistic in moving forward with the adoption of AI at my company. But we have found ways to embrace it, and that are kind of a lower risk and higher reward. And so the areas where we're really focused right now are the kind of work that you would maybe hire an intern to do, the kind of research work that maybe a VC would do. These are some kind of lower risk, higher reward areas that we're focused on. So like note taking, note capture is a big one. Virtually every company has embraced that. I think there's a lot of great tools out there. You can talk about Zoom Revenue Accelerator, Outreach. Kaya has got a great tool. Gong.io, of course, is doing well, but there's smaller companies like Attention.tech, who are startups in the space, and they have an excellent product. And honestly, it's a little difficult to even tell the difference between some of these, behemoth big companies and their products and the smaller startups, because AI has really leveled the playing fields. But, that's a low barrier of entry. So we embrace that. We're using a Zoom product today, but quite honestly, we could have picked any of the ones I mentioned, plus some others, and been probably as satisfied with it. But excellent in terms of just aggregating data, making it more accessible. The enablement of new employees has gone up through the roof because now we have a library. We have a very well curated, specified library for a new SE versus a new AE, and how we want them to sell the things we want to point out to them. We can now annotate and listen to summaries of calls or just parts of calls to help coach and up level their sales skill. And so there's great tools like that are just low barrier of entry. But even too, on just the content writing front, and I'm thinking about a marketing perspective here, is that, AI does a great job of finding ways to word things that are more compelling and fresh. And so one of the challenging things that, I've been in the MOPS space for a long time, and if you work in MOPS, you kind of by default accidentally become a marketer, because you're ingesting all the feedback and all the stuff and tactics, and you eventually start to form opinions of how things should work. And one of the things that I've kind of formed an opinion on is that I know that doing the same thing as everyone else is doing, saying the same things as everyone else is saying, trying the same channels that everyone else is trying, is a way to become basically white noise to your customers and to your prospects. And so AI is also a way that we can kind of add a fresh take to the vernacular and the language that we kind of tend to recycle with our prospects and our customers. And so there's some easy opportunities on both like the very front end of how we market and the back end of how we analyze the things we sell And so those are some areas we're embracing today. There's many others too, but I'll maybe pause there for a moment.
Great feedback. It's hilarious to learn that you had this anxiety around AI adoption and should you be doing it when you realized you were in the minority and you're probably like an early adopter, you know? And before we get into some of those specifics about, some of the tactical, actionable insights about achieving sales velocity or creating a better buyer journey or just making enablement more accessible across the org, and so our employees can be more autonomous and thrive within their roles. I want to get back to this idea of simplification of the stack, and wonder if you could get into describing your approach about your go-to-market data structure, the simplification of your stack. Your data integrity is the building block for success at DroneDeploy. And I've heard from you before that before you layer on AI across that go-to-market stack, data integrity needs to be solid. Your ICP, your ideal customer profile, and your buyer persona data needs to be enriched so you can be equitably distributed across territories. And that buyer journey needs to be thought through. And it's what I'm hearing, like the account orchestration layer. Otherwise, it's garbage in, garbage out. So where did you start to simplify? And specifically, then I think you implemented some custom code and some workflows that you invested in, maintain, that you couldn't find in the open market before you implemented AI as an efficiency layer.
Yeah, and I can speak to the, DroneDeploy, a lot of it was we had almost too much data, too much sources of data, too much enrichment, too much information that became kind of noise to us and was no longer predictive, or on its own, it wasn't predictive of any sort of future behavior by a customer. Surprisingly, we would even look at like trial usage and we could not correlate that to future acquisition. Pretty interesting. We would look at behavioral scores of prospects on our site and the things they're downloading, engaging with. And in many cases, we couldn't correlate any sort of future acquisition probability from those motions. And so one of the things, as you said, is figuring out the ICP is like, what are you trying to do? Who are you trying to win? Who actually wants you to win them? And then what are those precursory metrics that you can lean on that will help you identify those people in advance? Because there are things, all right, like in the biz dev space, we used to talk about this a lot. It's like a phone call, like 100 phone calls a day doesn't do anything. We're not going to pay you to make 100 phone calls a day. No one cares about that. But there are things you can do that are in your control that we can run it out. We know that if your 100 phone calls a day, we're going to convert at this rate to build this much pipeline, and that'll convert at this rate and this ASP, and there you go. We can reverse engineer what your 100 calls a day gets us in 6 months, right? Or what's the lifetime value of that? And you can say, well, your phone call is worth $50 to us. So just because it didn't go well, it is still worth $50. And so you can build that kind of analysis, and that's a great first step in kind of decluttering what actually matters. I'm a huge fan of just declutter the data. If it doesn't matter, it doesn't belong, right? It's fine if somebody's using it for a specific purpose, but if we're talking about the motions of sales and retention and expansion, that customer journey, that you have to bring in the metrics that actually matter. And so just by default, when you do that and you say, I'm going to focus on the things that I can empirically prove are driving the outcomes that I want, you by default start to deprecate tools and solutions that you may have relied on before. And this index starts to be created as far as what is valuable to you that you can expand upon. But when we're talking about AI, I want to pause because outside of DroneDeploy, I've worked with a lot of friends, little different patchel projects, and just things I've helped them with. I've got a good friend in the automotive space who is supporting a Midwest automotive group, pretty good size. And they had this promotion where they were trying to sell this specific model. They had like 60 of them. They were trying to move in a very short window of time. And they were doing all the classic motions and email and some different forms of like direct mail marketing and things like that. And just we're seeing like predictably normal results in a scenario where they needed accelerated results and also fast, right? So they needed more, but they needed it more quickly. And so we started to toy with, all right, well, let's try a new channel. Let's put our, let's do the thing we always say. Let's not sound like everyone else out there. Because we said, okay, we're gonna build a text bot. And so we have obviously all the permissions and the things that allow us to do text. And there's a protocol called A2P, application to person, and that's a whole process you have to go through if you want to do any sort of text motions to prospects. But we built a really simple tool, took ChatGTP, plugged it into Twilio, and then into a CRM. And so we essentially took the playbook and said, all right, ChatGPT, we want you to take our playbook that says all these things, it builds all the parameters, and it's very, quite honestly, it's very, if you saw it, it's very layman. It's just, here's a bunch of instructions and content, and we want you to take people down this path. And so if somebody clicked on a link or showed any sort of engagement, the chatbot would follow up with them. And it was kind of fascinating. He emailed, I just kind of was along for the ride on this one, but he emailed about 200,000 people. And out of that, he had about 65 leads, which is actually for email, not a terrible conversion rate. So 200,000 led to 65 real leads in the automotive space. He did a text campaign with about 45,000, and it led to about 4,000 leads. And this was all from a small, simple, maybe a week-long build text bot that was plugging in Twilio to ChatGPT, and that ended up being a smashing success for that group. But I learned a really valuable lesson through it all, is that, number one, that some of these things are not as hard. The barrier of entry is not nearly as high as it seems like on the outside. This stuff is very learnable. And two, again, like, we have to be innovative. And there are ways, and of course, there's always preferences. Some people might hear that and be like, I don't want a bot texting me. But at the end of the day, there are ways that we can break into markets in new ways using this technology that isn't invasive, that at wholesale is really engaging, interesting, and preferred by people.
Fascinating. I love the way you think about auditing your stack down to quantifying the value of an action. And if you can't quantify it or empirically prove it, then maybe get rid of it. So most people will say, oh, if I make 100 calls, I'll get this conversion rate. It'll generate this qualified pipeline, and it'll have this revenue contribution at this ASP. And the value of that action, though, that you're taking is $50 per phone call or $10 per phone call. And that's a great way to communicate it back to that loop and prioritize that tool or any AI layer that you layer on top of that dialer or that action to go quantify the value of each unit. And it also can communicate back to the rep of what's in it for them to hold them accountable and communicate that up the chain. That's fascinating. And I love the story about how easy it is to go to market nowadays, but it's only easy if you know what's going to be a unique approach to make it easier for your buyers to buy and make it easier for your sellers to sell via that sales emotion. So where do you begin as a RevOps leader to effectively adopt and implement this AI-enabled go-to-market strategy to achieve sales velocity or a better buyer journey? Like, what are the criteria that you go through after you audit your system and sunset some of your stuff?
I'm a total broker on this, but like, it all comes back to, what are you trying to accomplish? What do you want as an outcome? And what does the data tell you? And so, like, you can almost overanalyze this stuff, of course. Like, you can cut data up to the point where it starts to conflict with itself. But I do like to start with the data. And our CEO at DroneDeploy is kind of known for this. Like, just start with the data. Start with what the data tells you to do, and then start going down that path. If you need to backtrack, that's fine too. But I'll read you a couple stats. I know sometimes reading stats out loud like this is hard to follow, but let me hit you with a couple. So here's a good example when it comes to how people engage with a website. So 71% of customers today are open to and would prefer a live chat option. 71%. Okay. 82% of B2B website visitors, however, are not real people. So whereas most people want to come to your site and have a live chat, just know that 82%, this is a demand-based stat, that come to your B2B site are not actually prospects. They're bots, they're students, they're enthusiasts, whatever it is. In the drone space, there's so many enthusiasts. A lot of drone nerds out there. We love them. And then here's another fascinating one. So most companies in the B2B space, they have forms. It's just form city, man. You got, we have them too. We got dozens of forms that people can go access content, sign up for webinars, contact form, demo requests, faux requests, all these different functions of forms. So fascinating this is that there's an increasing form abandonment rate that's happening today. And 71% of form abandonment rate is due to data privacy concerns. This comes from LinkedIn. Okay. So most people want a live chat. Most people come to your site are not real people, or real prospects are real people, but not real prospects. And then a lot of people are becoming more and more adverse to forms. So, all right, why do they prefer chat? They prefer chat because chat feels like they're talking to somebody live. Even if they know they're talking to a bot, it feels like a conversation, less like this data collection process that they're following, right? I download white papers oftentimes for studies. And you know what? I hate doing it because I know what's going to follow. It's going to be 6 months of marketing emails and phone calls and stuff blowing up my LinkedIn and everything else. And it may be a fascinating solution, but it's the same motion I have to go through every time. So I am a form abandoner, right? But for whatever reason, even though I know the technology, I'm more willing to get on a live chat and fill out the same form, but just on a live chat because it is, I don't know, less intimidating. It's more step-by-step. It's more conversational. And so, again, starting with the data here, what does this tell us? All right, so younger people are coming into roles where they're in more buying decisions and they're adopting technology. They're more comfortable with live chat. So we should probably build out that process. And there's great solutions. You can go get a Drift or a Qualified or Intercom, and there's like many, many others. Or you could build your own, which is one of the things I think ultimately here at DroneDeploy we're probably going to do. Because again, there's really no difference between the SMS bot that I helped my buddy build for the auto group that he's working with, and a chat bot that sits on your site. There's more regulation and things you have to be considerate of in a large enterprise business, but it's effectively the same thing. And we're going to lean into those kind of communications because that's what people are asking for. And too, I'll just speak to this again, just data. And this one's more anecdotal, but just as a software buyer, I'll be honest with you, I'm tired of companies that are stuck in the 2000s. They're stuck in those motions. And you see it in this kind of outcome, is that you see something that's interesting to you. So you go to the site, you start engaging with stuff, and eventually you fill out a form, with a long form with all your information, and you'll hear back from a very nice SDR or BDR that follows up with you, and they want to book a qualification call. Okay. I just want a demo though. I just want a demo. But okay, so we set the qualification call. I go through that. Again, very nice, very sweet. But they aren't going to do a demo with me. That's not their role. And oftentimes then they schedule a call with an AE, and I go get on with the AE, and we have another great conversation. It's a lot of questions that me answering so that they can provide the right kind of solution. But oftentimes I either get a very light or I don't get a demo at all. Because, hey, I'm going to bring the SE in on this. I can tell you're a technical person, so we're going to bring the SE. And then I book a third meeting, and now we're oftentimes weeks out because my schedule's full, their schedule's full. I might have moved on to other things, but by then I'm kind of fatigued by this process. And so you go, all right, and a lot of the data shows that people are wanting more personalized pathing. They want, listen, you know who I am. Just take me through the steps that I'm asking to go through a little bit more at an accelerated pace. And so, all right, is it possible to do some of that qualification that you feel you need to do with me through another medium? So good example being, I go on your site, I fill out a form, or maybe I engage with your chatbot because that's what I'm more comfortable with. Could you follow up with me automatically, right after I click yes or submit? Because I'm in the mode, I dedicated time to do this. I'm probably willing to continue the conversation, answer whatever questions you have so that it accelerates me to the next step. And so I think these are just things that companies need to really consider. We're really strongly considering and working on. And again, it just kind of starts with that data though.
Yeah, I mean, that was fascinating. How do you find the balance? I think I'm a sales leader, so and if you have an ABX program, you look at the threshold of engagement, how warmed up somebody is, and how deep down the funnel they are in their self-education and awareness and stage before you pass them off to a BDR. But people want to talk to an expert, and they don't want to be interrogated. And so, like, finding that balance between speed to lead, the buyer journey, getting them to the credible expert in the sales assist motion, letting them self-educate and giving that autonomy and control while giving them that solution, the right solution based on what you know about them, is so difficult. And I love how you're thinking about building your own bot. That's amazing. You've nailed the account hierarchies. You've nailed the simplification of your stack and how to surface the highest propensity accounts. How do you weed out the drone nerds, as you call them, and the students, and while giving the right buyers a great experience and letting those drone nerds geek out on your website. Is there anything else you're doing in that buyer journey tactically, and considering now, aside from that on-site chat experience that's more dynamic, to route that buyer to the right credible expert with the most context?
It's a really good question, and it's a super common challenge that B2B companies have. Is, all right, so I want to get all this information so that I can route you properly, but I can't ask you every question under the sun because you just won't do it, right? You won't fill out a 50 form, field form and hit submit. So you just won't do that. So then I have to find a way to enrich it so I can do the routing. But where I think a lot of companies kind of miss it, and they figure this out usually by because they're almost victimized by their own success. You go through this early stage startup where you'd pay for leads. You just come to my site and just look at something. I'll pay you to do it. Somebody, please. And then eventually you start to get that kind of organic traction. And like DroneDeploy for sure experienced this, is that they got all this traction and everything was just flowing in. Everything was flowing through Marketo right into Salesforce, and it is really hard to differentiate like what is actually valuable. And so I call it sensitivity settings. I'm sure there's maybe a more official term, but when I talk about that, I'm talking about MOPS. Like there needs to be dialed up sensitivity settings. Like what are the indicators in what the data we have collected or enriched through a Clearbit, through a Zoom Info, through a D&B, through any of those services? What in there has indicated to us that they are not really a buyer and they should never make their way into the CRM? That's filter number one, right? Sometimes it's just their title. Sometimes it's like a personal email versus a company email. Sometimes it's employee count at the company. Like just different things that that's a flag for me that I'm going to, maybe I'll send you a different path, but I'm not going to send you into the CRM as a record. Filter number one. Filter number two is the intent data is a super buzzy word nowadays. It has been for a few years. And I kind of like have a love-hate relationship with intent data. Like I love what intent data implies. It implies that I can lean on the behavior of an account to indicate their readiness to convert with me. The problem is if I'm talking to an account that's gotten 1,000 employees, there might be one buyer. And it does not matter how engaged that account is at searching drone-related things. If that one person isn't, it doesn't matter. It gives you a false positive or sometimes even a false negative. And so privacy law is it prevents us from actually looking at what is Adam searching for. Is he looking for drones? Because that would be useful. But, thankfully, privacy laws prevent people from doing that. And so that's not an option, right? So, all right. So what is the best alternative? Well, I think number one, you have to have some sort of scoring mechanism. So this was one of the very first things I came into DroneDeploy. I was like, time out, y'all. I do not care about volume leads, volume MQLs. None of that matters because a lead is a lead, but not all leads are created equal. They're not all ready at or even anywhere close to being in the same stage of the buyer's journey. And so there were a few things we did. I'm going to go up and I'll come back down to more specific. We have this customer journey that we want accounts to follow, very similar to every other customer journey out there. We want to build awareness with you. There's no point. I think it's silly when I receive marketing content from companies and it's this laundry list of things and case studies and links. And I'm like, I don't even know who you are. So, and you're sending me this stuff. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I never look at it. I honestly, they just forgot to make me aware of what they are, right? They forgot. And so we have to build awareness with companies. As soon as they start to engage with us and we move them to education, then there's an opportunity phase where we're trying to close them. And then we close them. It's all about adoption and enablement. And then they go into an expansion advocacy motion. And if they start to show risk, then we put them in account retention and we become, really supportive and trying to help, retain them. And so typical thing. But then we took it another layer further and we said, okay, this account may be in expansion motion, but then we look at the behavior of the people on that account. And so if we have 10 people, 2 of them could be in expansion motion because of all that behavior in indications that we are using to say they've been part of this whole journey. But the other 8 might be in awareness. They may know nothing DroneDeploy. And, we're in the construction space, which I know there's many industries that have this problem, is that buying is decentralized, right? You have enterprise budgets and they're awesome. They're kind of the holy grail of our world. But the problem is like there's massive multi-year projects that exist that are almost like companies on their own. And you could be fully penetrated over here, but this company or this project over here at the same company, they know what DroneDeploy means and they want nothing to do with you. So you have to establish that customer journey you want, but then who are the people? Where are they in there? What are their buying personas? Are they an economic buyer? Are they an influencer? Are they, the actual decision maker? You have to figure those things out. And then, okay, now you have all this information of where you want them to go and where they are. And I have some sort of fit metric, right? Some sort of like, who are they? A demographic thing that earns a score based on how interesting you are. Are you that economic buyer? You're really interesting to us. Are you a user? You're a little less interesting to us from a sales perspective, right? But then here comes all the behavioral stuff. This is the stuff where I think is super fascinating and is like the real intent data. I'm just behind this differently than some people, but I think this is the real intent data. Is that, okay, so if you are searching our stuff, clicking our links, downloading our content, joining our webinars, very obvious indicators. But here's one, like what about technographic? If we have solutions that we fit really nicely with, and you're using that solution, that's a great technographic fit. You may not even know who we are, but that's easy, right? Or how about this? You are at a company working on a project where we have another successful project. That's a great fit because we have a story to tell that's going to hit pretty close to home. And so there's different scoring mechanisms you can put in. And this is where I think filter number 2 is much more of that fine filter where we are going to put you through this scoring mechanism. And again, this is one of the first things I did is to say, all right, now let's bucket it. So you have this like HERO concept, HIRO is acronym, basically it's like high intent. Of that pool of leads, the ones that are converting at 25% or better, they're the cream of the crop. They should be handheld, white gloves. They're the ones that get the most immediate attention, and you push them through to the best people as soon as you possibly can. And then you kind of work your way down the list from there. And here's the thing. Are there people that maybe aren't as, in our data, a good a fit as people ahead of them? Yes. And are they a good fit, but maybe not behaving as in a way to earn a score that puts them ahead of other people? Yes, that could happen. But statistics is like the power law thing, right? It doesn't mean it's always right at the individual prospect level, but if you step back in the grand scheme, that kind of mechanism will work out in your favor because you're kind of Vegas in that scenario. You're going to win more often than you're going to lose.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You talked about intent, and like intent means an action you took. Maybe cookies are going away. They're getting deprecated. So third-party data, first-party data, a lot of we think about as intent is what did you do on my website? Did you download an ebook? Did you click on this thing? Did you attend a webinar? But you're also talking about intent from a technographic perspective. Like I'm working on this project that could be a similar project that we could solve for, we could add value for. And thinking about that across other B2B, let's say SaaS landscapes, could be a leader speaking at, has a speaking engagement, a keynote speech on a topic. They're not on your website, but they're doing something about that could be relevant for you, and that could add to that score for intent, and you're really aggregating that for your team throughout the buyer journey. That brings me, I think, my last question, which is you're enriching, you're scoring, you're prioritizing in this very holistic way that's taken a lot of data analysis where you said, time out, y'all. I'm from Omaha. You guys need to slow your roll. These really high intent buyers and prospects get routed to your sales team. How do you layer in AI to help them focus on the next best action and give them the context they need to deliver a really consultative kind of partner-led kind of sales motion where they're partnering with their champion, their economic buyers?
Well, I'll peel back the kimono a little bit. Like, this is what we're working on right now, which I am excited about.
Yeah.
So DroneDeploy has got like this fascinating story where there's three founders who are all very involved in the business. Two of them are PhDs in math and science, basically AI. And then the third one, I think, is the smartest of the three, and he's the one that doesn't have a PhD. He's our CEO, and all three are brilliant. And one of them, his sole OKR, like first, second, third OKR for the next probably 2 years, is building go-to-market AI solutions. And so actually right before this recording, I was on a call with him going through this project. It's a very broad sweeping project, but it is this topic of, okay, so let's fast forward into the perfect scenario. Adam Ferris is an ideal customer profile for us, and he comes to our lead funnel, and we enrich it immediately, and we got all the data, and we're about to call him. What would you like AI to do at that point? Well, or what would you like anybody to do at that point? Well, if I were about to make that phone call, I would want to know, what does Adam know about us? What is his behaviors towards our, our buying motions been up to this point? What should I share with them in terms of like actual collateral, data, decks, things like that is going to resonate with them? What is maybe some highlight messaging that maybe we've done with him in the past that he is connected with, so I can reference those things? If there's been any engagement with him in the past, can I summarize that? Because there could be 100 emails or 100 minutes of phone calls. Can I get that summarized somewhere so I can just see this is the highlight reel of our history with Adam, and I could go into that call, so all the immediately very equipped. And there are solutions that are trying to do this today. I could name some of them, but we're working on essentially building this tools that will go pull the data that's on the internet, scrape it, and feed it back to us in a summarized way. We already have all the call transcripts. We already have Zoom Revenue Accelerator recordings and transcriptions of previous phone calls or video calls. And AI does a really good job right now. This isn't like a future thing of taking a lot of data and just boom, here's the highlights that you need to know. And it does a really good job. It keeps getting better virtually every month. And so this is what we're working towards right now. And the fascinating thing is, like, again, it feels like that should be really hard to do. It feels like the barrier of entry should be like you have to be a PhD, but you really don't. In today's world, like, you have, there's so much resources out there that you can build these solutions if you're really thoughtful and you're meticulous in your scoping. This is like where I think, honestly, a lot of our energy should be shifting, is less on like configuration and like data entry, data management, and more on the actual preparation and scoping of the builds. And so, which is great for technical people, because this is the pivot that we often make. You've seen all the studies that, McKinsey's put out, and the Economic World Forum put one out too, is like 30-something% of jobs will be enhanced by AI. And I think it's like closer, especially in our world, 100% should be enhanced. And so I go, all right, if you're a really technical person, don't be scared or timid. Don't be part of that 55% that says, I don't know, or I don't want to integrate AI, because I do think that's probably coming from a fear-based standpoint. It's okay to be cautious, but again, it's not a matter of if AI is going to emerge into all of our spaces. It is. It's not even when. It is. It already has, and will continue to. And so I think it's about shifting that focus. And so in our case, on this specific project, it's all the technical energy really right now is dedicated towards the scope and the thoroughness of making sure that we are being considerate of all the avenues and outcomes that we want to drive, and all the, kind of doing this pre-mortem motion of, all right, so if all of our dreams and aspirations come true, what would be the consequences of it? What would be the potential things that would we wouldn't like or could disrupt it? And so that's where a lot of our energy is going. But it is a fascinating process that we're going through right now.
Super fascinating. Salesforce came out with a study in December 2022. They pulled 7,700 reps or something like that and found that within the given sales plays and stack that we give the modern go-to-market team, sales reps are only selling about 28% of the time. They're context switching between system and system and system and system to connect the dots with pattern recognition on all the signals and all the intent data and all the firmographic data we have about our customers throughout their journey to be able to then reach out with purpose. And then they have to go figure out what to write or what medium to reach out through. So like this single pane of glass is the holy grail, and we have all the data. It does take that solutioning and thinking about the buyer and that engagement with the seller to pair them with the right experience and the right solution in a single pane of glass, and AI can get us there. And I got really excited about that. Jason, I learned tons from you today about the challenges you're solving and your method of madness. You're really think deeply about your buyer and your team and the data. And I love how you slow people down and simplify, and how you're investing in AI methodically. You're a good steward of AI. You're a good steward of your customer and your team, and you're future-proofing your own career and your company's revenue while you're doing it. I really, really am thankful. If you could leave our viewers with one actionable tactic, a couple sentences, what would it be? What do you want them to take away from this conversation?
Start with what is the minimal amount of effort and investment that would make the greatest impact. I think that's a great place to start when considering your tech stack and the changes that you could make, because there's a lot of like good ideas, but what is the hell yeah idea? What is the idea that if you got half the outcome that you wanted to and it costs you twice as much, you would still say hell yeah? That is the idea to start with here. And I think we all have those in our areas of focus.
Cool. From Omaha to the world, from CPG to SaaS to drones and VR, AR, and AI. Thank you to our listeners, and especially thank you to you, Jason, for joining us today and giving us a peek into your world in RevOps and marketing ops and AI enablement at DroneDeploy. For everyone that joined, we'll see you on the flip side next month. Thanks, Jason. Cheers.